He woke up before the sun most days. Not because he wanted to, but because the city was loud even when it was tired. The boy slept near an old bus stop where the roof leaked when it rained and the wind never stopped pushing cold air through his thin clothes. He was 12 years old. Though his face looked older, shaped by hunger and long nights without rest. People passed him every morning. Some avoided his eyes, some pretended he was not there, and a few dropped coins without slowing down. His name was Amir, but no one on the street ever asked for it. To most people, he was just another homeless kid sitting on the ground with a small bag and worn shoes. Amir learned early that the streets did not care if you were kind or cruel. They only cared if you were strong enough to survive another day. He washed his face in public bathrooms when he could, and when he could not, he used rainwater or a bottle he saved for emergencies. Food was never guaranteed. Some days he found leftovers behind restaurants. Other days he depended on small acts of kindness from strangers. He never begged loudly. He felt ashamed doing that. Instead, he helped when he could. He opened doors, picked up trash, carried groceries for elderly people. Not everyone noticed, but he kept trying because it made him feel human. At night, when the city lights blurred into yellow lines, Amir thought about his mother. She had died when he was very young, sick and tired, but gentle until the end. She used to tell him that kindness was the only thing no one could steal from you. Even when you had nothing else, those words stayed with him. Even when his stomach hurt from hunger and his hands shook from the cold. Sometimes he watched families through shop windows, laughing, arguing, living normal lives. He did not hate them, but he wondered how close happiness could be and still feel so far away. There were moments when anger tried to take over, when he felt invisible and unwanted, but then he remembered his mother's voice and forced himself to breathe. The streets taught Amir many lessons too fast. He learned which areas were dangerous, which adults to avoid, and which faces were safe. He saw people with expensive clothes who looked empty, and people with nothing who still shared what little they had. This confused him at first, but later he understood that money did not always mean peace. One afternoon, after a long day without food, Amir sat near a busy park, watching people rush by with phones in their hands and worries on their faces. He felt tired, not just in his body, but in his heart. Still, he sat up straight because looking weak invited trouble. He hugged his small bag close. Inside were all his belongings, an old photo of his mother, a broken watch, and a piece of bread saved for later. He noticed that the city sounded different when you were alone. Every laugh felt louder, every argument sharper. The world seemed to move forward without waiting, but Amir stayed where he was, surviving 1 hour at a time. He had dreams too. Simple ones, a warm bed, regular meals, a chance to go to school, but he rarely said them out loud. Saying them made the pain stronger. That day, as the sun slowly lowered, Amir stood up to stretch his legs. That was when he noticed her, sitting alone on a bench nearby. She was dressed well, but her shoulders were shaking, her face hidden in her hands. She was crying quietly, the kind of crying that comes from deep inside. People walked past her just like they walked past him. No one stopped. Amir froze for a moment. His first thought was to walk away. Life had taught him to mind his own business. But something pulled at him. Maybe it was the way her sadness felt familiar, heavy and lonely, like his own nights on the street. He remembered his mother again, and the way she cried when she thought he was asleep. He did not know it then, but that moment, that single choice to notice instead of ignore, was about to change everything. His life on the streets had shaped him in pain, but it had also given him something rare, the ability to see suffering without turning away. And as he stood there, unsure and hungry, Amir took his first step toward a future he never imagined possible. Amir stood a few steps away from the bench, unsure what to do next. His feet felt heavy, like the ground was holding him back. The woman's quiet crying filled the space between them, soft but painful. It was not loud enough to ask for help, but strong enough to show deep sorrow. People kept passing by, some glanced for a second, others never looked at all. The city moved like nothing was wrong. He told himself it was not his problem, that he had his own struggles, his own hunger, his own fear of the night. He could easily turn around and walk back to his spot near the bus stop. No one would blame him. No one ever blamed a homeless kid for staying away. But his heart would not listen. It beat faster, pushing him forward, reminding him of all the times he wished someone had noticed his pain. The woman looked different from most people who sat in the park. Her clothes were clean and neat, her shoes expensive, but her face showed exhaustion, the kind that came from carrying too much inside for too long. Her hands trembled as she wiped her tears. Amir noticed her fingers were shaking, just like his used to shake when he went a whole day without food. He took one slow step closer, then another. Every step felt risky. He had learned that approaching strangers could bring trouble, especially when you looked like him, thin, dirty, unwanted. Some people reacted with fear, others with anger, but something told him she would not hurt him. Her sadness felt honest. Amir cleared his throat quietly. His voice came out small and unsure. He asked if she was okay. The words felt strange in his mouth. He rarely spoke to adults unless necessary. The woman did not respond at first. She seemed lost in her thoughts. Then slowly she looked up. Her eyes were red, filled with tears and surprise. She had not expected a child like him to notice her. For a moment, they just looked at each other. She saw a boy with worn clothes and tired eyes, and he saw a woman who looked strong but was breaking inside. The silence between them felt heavy, but not uncomfortable. She tried to smile, but it did not work. More tears fell. Amir felt panic rise inside him. He did not know how to comfort someone like her. He had no money, no advice, no solution. All he had was his presence. He reached into his small bag and pulled out the piece of bread he had saved. It was hard and dry, but it was all he had for the evening. He held it out to her with shaking hands. She stared at the bread, confused, then at him. Her eyes widened. She tried to refuse, shaking her head gently, but Amir insisted. He said she looked like she needed it more than him right now. The words surprised even himself. Hunger twisted inside his stomach, but his heart felt stronger than his body. The woman finally took the bread. Her hands touched his for a second. They were warm, his were cold. She whispered, "Thank you." Her voice cracked. She took a small bite, then stopped, tears rolling down again. This time different, softer, mixed with something like guilt and gratitude. She asked him why he would give away his food. Amir shrugged. He said his mother taught him to help people who were hurting, even when you were hurting too. The words felt simple, but they hit her deeply. She looked away, pressing her lips together as if trying to hold back a wave of emotions. They talked quietly. Amir told her a little about himself. Not everything, just enough that he lived on the streets, that he tried to stay out of trouble, that he liked watching people because it made him feel less alone. She listened carefully, like every word mattered, something Amir was not used to. She told him she felt lost, even though her life looked perfect from the outside. She said she felt forgotten by the one person she loved the most. She did not say names or details, but Amir understood the feeling. Loneliness did not care how rich or poor you were. It found everyone the same way. As the sun dipped lower and the sky changed color, Amir felt something shift inside him. He had approached her to help, but somehow they were helping each other. He did not know who she really was, and she did not know what her tears would lead to. But that meeting, born from a simple moment of noticing, had already started changing paths that were never meant to cross. The woman slowly stood up from the bench, holding the small piece of bread in her hand like it was something precious. She looked at Amir again, this time with curiosity mixed with concern. She asked him where he was going to sleep that night. The question caught him off guard. Adults rarely asked him that. Most did not want to know the answer. Amir pointed toward the old bus stop across the road. He said it was not safe, but it was dry, and that was enough for him. The woman's face tightened. She looked around as if seeing the city differently for the first time, as if the buildings and lights suddenly felt colder. She reached into her purse and pulled out some money, holding it out toward him gently. Not like charity, but like an apology. Amir stepped back without thinking, shaking his head quickly. He said he did not help her for money. His voice was soft but firm. The woman froze, surprised, then slowly lowered her hand. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of traffic filled the silence. Horns, footsteps, distant voices. The woman finally asked him why he was really there, why he chose to talk to her when so many others walked past. Amir thought for a second, then said she looked like she needed someone to notice her, just like he did. Those words stayed hanging in the air, heavy and honest. The woman felt her chest tighten again. But this time it was not pain alone. It was something else, something close to shame. She realized how often she ignored people like him, how many times she had looked away, believing money could protect her from guilt. She asked him if he was hungry now. Amir nodded slightly. Not wanting to lie, she suggested they walk to a nearby cafe, just to get something warm. Amir hesitated, his body tensed. He had been chased out of places like that before. People did not like homeless kids sitting near clean tables, but something in her tone felt safe. They walked slowly, side by side, strangers connected by a quiet understanding. Inside the cafe, heads turned, whispers followed. Amir felt every stare like a weight, but the woman did not let go of the door until he walked in. She ordered food for him without asking too many questions: soup, bread, and tea, simple things that felt like luxury to him. As he ate, carefully and politely, the woman watched him. Noticing how grateful he was for things others took for granted, she asked about his past, about school, about his family. Amir answered honestly. He told her about his mother, about losing his home, about learning to survive without becoming angry at the world. She listened closely, not interrupting, not checking her phone, just listening, something Amir had not experienced in a long time. For the first time in months, he felt seen, not as a problem, not as a burden, but as a person. The woman shared a little too. She spoke about her son, a powerful man who had everything except time for her. She said success had built walls between them, and she felt like a stranger in his life. Amir did not know much about millionaires, but he knew what it felt like to be forgotten. When they finished, she paid quietly and stood up. She asked Amir what he wanted for his future. The question made his throat tighten. He said he wanted to learn, to go to school again, to sleep without fear. The words came out slowly, like dreams he had locked away. She nodded, like she was memorizing every word. Then she gave him her scarf, wrapping it gently around his neck, saying nights were colder than people thought. Amir tried to refuse, but she insisted, smiling softly. As they stepped back outside, the city lights flickered on, and the air felt different, heavier with possibility. The woman told Amir they would meet again, not as a promise made lightly, but as a decision. Amir watched her walk away, not knowing who she really was, but feeling something change deep inside him. That night, back at the bus stop, wrapped in her scarf, Amir stared at the sky, his stomach full and his heart restless. He did not know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in a long while, the streets felt a little less endless, and hope, quiet but real, sat beside him in the dark. The next morning arrived colder than usual, and Amir woke with the scarf still wrapped around his neck. For a moment he forgot where it came from. Then he remembered the woman, her eyes, her voice, the warmth of soup, the way she listened. The memory made his chest feel tight and hopeful at the same time. Across the city, in a quiet, expensive apartment, the woman sat by a large window holding an empty teacup, her eyes fixed on the streets far below. Sleep had not come easily to her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the boy's thin hands offering her bread, a child with nothing giving her the one thing he had saved. The thought shook her more than she wanted to admit. Her name was Eleanor, and for years people had known her only as the mother of a powerful millionaire, a woman surrounded by comfort, drivers, staff, and silence. But last night had broken something open inside her. She realized how heavy her loneliness had become and how blind wealth had made her to the suffering right in front of her. She thought about Amir's words, about how he said he noticed her because she looked forgotten. The truth of it hurt because she was forgotten, not by the world, but by her own son, the man she had raised, supported, and loved. Success had taken him far away, not in distance, but in heart. Eleanor made a decision before fear could stop her. She called her assistant and asked for help finding the boy. She gave only simple details: a bus stop, a park, a scarf she had given him. She did not want this to become charity or a story for attention. She just needed to know if he was safe. Meanwhile, Amir spent his day, as usual, helping where he could, staying alert. But something had changed in him. He walked straighter, spoke a little more confidently. The scarf around his neck felt like protection, not just from the cold, but from the idea that he was invisible. People still passed him by, but it hurt less now. By afternoon, Eleanor's driver stopped near the park. She stepped out slowly, nervous in a way she had not felt in years. This time she noticed everything: the cracks in the sidewalk, the tired faces, the children selling small items for money. The world looked different when you finally chose to see it. She spotted Amir near the bus stop, talking to an elderly man. Her heart jumped, relief washing over her. She approached carefully, not wanting to scare him. When Amir saw her, his eyes widened in surprise, then softened into a shy smile. She asked how he was. Amir answered honestly, saying he was okay, better than most days. She noticed how he stood, alert but respectful, strong in a quiet way. She asked if she could sit with him for a while, and he nodded. They talked again, longer this time, about small things and big ones, about the streets, about life, about regrets. Eleanor listened, not as a rich woman, not as someone above him, but as a mother who had lost her way. She realized that helping Amir was not just about changing his life. It was about facing her own failures. She asked him if he would allow her to help him properly, not with money handed out once, but with real support, school, shelter, guidance. Amir hesitated. Trust did not come easily to him. Promises had been broken before, but something in her eyes felt steady, not rushed, not proud, just honest. At the same time, far away in a glass office building, Eleanor's son received a message from his assistant about his mother's strange request. Curiosity turned into concern, then into irritation. He did not understand why she was suddenly interested in a homeless boy, but something in her voice message felt different, emotional, urgent. That evening, as Eleanor walked away again, promising to return soon, Amir watched the city lights turn on, unaware that his simple act of kindness had reached far beyond that park bench. It had stirred a mother's heart, awakened buried guilt, and quietly pulled the attention of a man whose wealth could change destinies. Amir lay down that night, feeling the cold concrete beneath him. But his thoughts were warm and restless. He did not know that his life was already shifting, that unseen doors were opening, all because one day on the streets, he chose to notice a woman crying and refused to look away. 2 days passed, and Amir noticed the city watching him differently. Not because the streets had changed, but because something inside him had. He still slept near the bus stop, still woke to noise and cold. But his thoughts no longer felt trapped. Eleanor's promise echoed in his mind, soft but steady. He did not fully trust it yet, but he allowed himself to hope just a little. On the third morning, Eleanor returned, this time with no driver in sight. She walked alone, dressed simply, blending in more than she ever had before. Amir saw her from a distance and felt a mix of relief and fear. People on the streets often made promises they could not keep, but she had come back, and that mattered. She greeted him like an equal, asking if she could sit, asking if he had eaten, small questions that felt big to someone like him. She brought a breakfast, warm and fresh, and waited until he finished eating before speaking about anything serious. That patience told Amir more than words ever could. Eleanor explained that she wanted to help him leave the streets, not just for a night, but for good. She spoke about school programs, safe housing, people who could support him. She made it clear that he would have a choice in everything. Nothing would be forced. Amir listened quietly, his heart pounding. Every option sounded like a dream he had trained himself not to believe in. He asked her why she cared so much. The question slipped out before he could stop it. Eleanor looked down for a moment, then told him the truth. She said he reminded her of who she used to be before comfort made her blind, and of what her son had lost along the way. Helping Amir felt like a way to fix something broken inside herself. At the same time, Eleanor's son, Victor, finally decided to get involved. Curiosity had turned into unease. He was used to solving problems with money and distance, but his mother's sudden change unsettled him. He asked the security team to quietly observe the situation, not to interfere, just understand. When Victor first saw Amir from across the street, he felt confusion more than sympathy. The boy did not look dangerous or clever, just thin and tired. Victor struggled to understand how a single homeless child could affect his mother so deeply. But then he watched how Amir spoke, how he listened, how he treated people around him. Something about the boy's calm strength made him pause. Later that day, Victor finally approached, introducing himself simply, without titles. Amir did not know who he was, only that he carried himself like someone used to being obeyed. The air shifted when he arrived. Tension quietly filled the space. Eleanor watched closely, unsure how this meeting would unfold. Victor tested Amir with questions, asking about his choices, his honesty, his reasons, expecting either fear or greed. But Amir answered plainly. He said he helped Eleanor because she was hurting, not because he wanted anything. And if help came, he would accept it with gratitude, not entitlement. Those words landed harder than Victor expected. They challenged everything he believed about survival and success. For the first time in years, he felt embarrassed by his own assumptions. The boy standing in front of him had nothing, yet carried dignity Victor rarely saw in boardrooms. That evening, Victor and Eleanor spoke privately. For the first time in a long while, they argued, they reflected, they confronted the distance between them. Amir's presence forced them to face uncomfortable truths about neglect, about priorities, about what real responsibility looked like. By the end of the night, a decision was made, not out of guilt, but respect. They would give Amir a real chance, education, shelter, mentorship, but also boundaries and expectations, not charity, but opportunity. Amir returned to the bus stop that night, unaware of the full conversation. But he felt the shift. Something bigger than kindness was forming around him. The streets that once felt endless now felt temporary. And deep inside, Amir sensed that the hardest test was still ahead, learning how to trust a future he never planned for. The change did not happen all at once, and that made it harder for Amir than he expected. The first step was leaving the streets, something he had dreamed about and feared at the same time. Eleanor arranged a temporary shelter, clean, quiet, and safe. But when Amir lay on a soft bed that first night, he could not sleep. The silence felt too loud, and the walls felt too close. He woke up before sunrise out of habit, his body still trained by the streets. For a moment he panicked, thinking he had missed something important. Then he remembered where he was: the clean sheets, the locked door, the warm air. Relief washed over him slowly. Mixed with guilt, he wondered if he deserved this comfort when so many others were still outside. Eleanor visited often, not as a savior, but as someone learning alongside him. She brought books, clothes, and simple food, but more importantly, she brought consistency. She always came when she said she would. That reliability began to heal something in Amir that hunger never touched. School came next, a small learning center that helped children who had fallen behind. Amir was nervous. His hands shook on the first day. He felt older and smaller than everyone else at the same time. But he listened carefully, absorbing every lesson like it might disappear. Numbers, words, history. The world opened up to him page by page. Victor stayed in the background at first, watching quietly, unsure of his place, but he noticed changes too. Amir's posture improved. His eyes grew brighter. He asked thoughtful questions. Victor began visiting more, not to control, but to understand. Conversations that once felt awkward slowly became honest. Amir struggled in ways no one expected. Loud noises made him flinch. Kindness made him suspicious. Compliments confused him. Years of survival had taught him to expect loss, not stability. One night he packed his bag, ready to leave, convinced it was all temporary. Eleanor found him sitting by the door. She did not scold him or beg him to stay. She simply sat beside him and told him that fear was allowed, that leaving would not erase his worth, but staying could build something new. Amir cried that night, quietly, releasing years of tension he had never named. Meanwhile, Victor faced his own struggle. Watching Amir forced him to confront the cost of his ambition. He saw himself in the boy's hunger, but also saw what he had sacrificed to succeed. Time, empathy, connection. Helping Amir was no longer charity. It was a mirror. As weeks passed, Amir began to believe in tomorrow. Small routines grounded him. Morning classes, shared meals, evening reading. He started helping other children, tutoring those who struggled, offering patience the way someone once offered him bread. His kindness did not disappear with comfort. It grew. One afternoon, Amir was invited to speak at the learning center about his experience. His voice shook at first, but as he spoke, confidence replaced fear. He realized the story mattered, not because it was sad, but because it showed resilience. Victor watched from the back, feeling pride he had not earned but deeply felt. That night, as Amir wrote in a notebook Eleanor had given him, he understood something important. The streets had shaped him, but they did not define him. The woman he helped had opened a door, but he was the one choosing to walk through it. And for the first time, Amir felt ownership over his future, not as a survivor, but as a builder of something better. Victor could no longer ignore what was happening. He had watched from a distance at first, unsure if this was just another adult fantasy of his mother's, another attempt to fix the world in small ways. But as he observed Amir, he began to see something different. This boy, ragged and small, held a quiet strength that his money and power had never produced. Victor decided to meet Amir properly, not as the son of Eleanor, not as a millionaire, but as someone curious, someone who wanted to understand. He approached carefully, dressed simply, keeping his voice low. For the first time, he had to speak without authority, without orders, without expectations of obedience. Amir noticed him immediately. Eyes wary but polite, he had learned not to trust easily. Yet something in Victor's posture told him he was not a threat. Victor started with simple questions about Amir's day, about the shelter, about his schooling, trying to find a place to connect. Amir answered honestly, careful with words, aware that everything he said could be judged, but also wanting to be understood. He spoke about the streets, the hunger, the cold nights, and the small kindnesses that had kept him going. He spoke of Eleanor's generosity without exaggeration, only truth. Victor listened, though it was uncomfortable. The boy's honesty reflected everything he had avoided feeling. The privilege that had insulated him suddenly seemed hollow. Every answer Amir gave forced him to look at the life he had taken for granted. His mother's tears, the boy's courage, the walls of his own success suddenly felt like a cage. As they walked through the city together, Victor began to ask more personal questions about Amir's dreams, his fears, his past. Amir hesitated at first, then spoke softly of the mother he lost, the loneliness of the streets, and the hope that someone, somewhere, would notice him. That hope had been fragile, but Eleanor's presence had strengthened it. Victor was struck by something unexpected. He realized that Amir had survived more than he ever could have imagined. Yet he had done so without bitterness, without anger, without surrendering his sense of kindness. The boy had something that Victor lacked entirely: humility, honesty, and the ability to see others without judgment. Eleanor watched the two from a distance, seeing not just a boy and her son, but two worlds colliding, two kinds of strength meeting. She realized that this encounter could heal more than one life. It could mend gaps between wealth and empathy, power and humility, human connection and loneliness. Victor finally asked Amir what he wanted most, expecting something material, money, or comfort. But Amir spoke of simple things: education, stability, friendship, the chance to live without fear. His answers were so pure, so rooted in the basic human need to belong, that Victor felt both shame and admiration. He knew then that he could not offer him anything halfway. He could not throw money or convenience at a problem that required presence, patience, and understanding. He had to invest in Amir as a person, not a project. This realization changed his own view of what responsibility meant. Over the next weeks, Victor became a quiet but steady presence in Amir's life, helping arrange schooling, introducing mentors, and creating safe spaces without taking control. He learned from Amir's patience, his resilience, his ability to see kindness in small gestures, lessons that no amount of wealth had ever taught him. By the time Amir was ready to start attending full-time classes, the dynamic had shifted completely. He was no longer just a homeless boy. He was a young man with potential, insight, and respect, shaping the lives around him as much as they were shaping his. Victor, Eleanor, and even the people at the shelter realized that one child's courage and honesty could challenge the richest and most powerful among them. That day, Amir walked into the learning center with a steady step, feeling the weight of his past, but the hope of his future. He did not know how much his actions had changed the world around him, but he knew one thing clearly: noticing a person in pain, acting with honesty and courage, had the power to transform lives far beyond what anyone could have imagined. The morning sun spilled across the city, warm and golden, but Amir felt something stronger than the warmth of light. He felt possibility, a feeling he had not known since before the streets had claimed him. The bus stop, the broken bottles, the hunger, and the cold nights were memories now, memories that had shaped him but no longer defined him. Eleanor waited for him outside the learning center, holding a small folder with papers inside. She smiled softly, proud but cautious. Amir walked up, scarf around his neck, backpack slung over one shoulder. He felt taller than he looked, stronger than he believed. The streets had tested him, but he had survived with his heart intact, and that heart was about to lead him into something completely new. Inside the center, the staff had prepared a room for him, not as a special case, but as someone ready to step into a chance he had earned. He would attend classes with other children, learn at his pace, and receive mentorship from teachers who believed in him. Eleanor introduced him to them quietly, and Amir nodded, careful, respectful, but curious. Victor arrived later, still unsure of the boundaries, but determined to support. He watched Amir take his seat, noting how naturally the boy adapted to the space, how he observed, listened, and learned. There was humility in his posture, yet a quiet confidence that demanded respect without demanding attention. Days turned into weeks, and Amir's life transformed in ways he had never imagined. School became more than a place to learn facts. It was a place to dream, to explore ideas, to feel safe, and to build a future piece by piece. He asked questions, some naive, some surprisingly insightful, and the teachers, Eleanor, and even Victor found themselves learning from him. Eleanor spent time with Amir outside the school, helping him navigate the world of comfort and security he had never known. She taught him manners, how to dress neatly, how to ask questions without fear, how to speak with confidence. But she also learned from him. The lessons of resilience, kindness, and courage he carried from the streets were unforgettable. Victor, meanwhile, softened in ways he had never expected. He no longer saw Amir as a responsibility or a charity case. He saw him as a teacher, a mirror reflecting what life had stripped away from those born with privilege. Victor began to understand that wealth was meaningless without empathy, power was hollow without compassion, and success was shallow without heart. Amir's story began to ripple outward. The shelter, the learning center, even neighbors on the street started noticing the boy who had been invisible, now walking with purpose, speaking with clarity, and sharing his experience with others. He helped new children arriving from the streets, offering guidance, small acts of kindness, and hoped that everything could be different if they held on to honesty and courage. One evening, Eleanor, Victor, and Amir sat together overlooking the city from a quiet rooftop, the lights below blinking like tiny stars. Eleanor thanked Amir for showing her the importance of noticing, of acting, of caring. Victor admitted that he had learned humility from someone he once considered powerless, and Amir smiled, realizing that kindness, even from someone small and unseen, could change not one life, but many. Amir understood that life was not about wealth, comfort, or escaping the past. It was about choices, courage, and heart. The streets had taught him to survive. Eleanor had shown him how to live, and Victor had helped him see the power of integrity. Together, they had created a chain of change, proving that one act of courage and compassion could ripple farther than anyone imagined. By the time Amir finally returned to the bus stop, not to sleep, but to show others where hope could begin, he felt transformed, the concrete under his hands and feet no longer cold and unforgiving, but a foundation for the life he was building. He realized that the moment he chose to notice a crying woman, to step forward despite fear, had set a chain in motion that changed everything. His life, Eleanor's, Victor's, and the countless lives his courage would continue to touch. Amir's journey was no longer defined by hunger, fear, or loneliness. It was defined by heart, by resilience, and by the quiet, unstoppable power of noticing another human being and acting when it mattered most. A single choice that began on a park bench had now rewritten the story of all their lives, forever.